In 2018, an urban explorer uploaded his final live stream from inside a condemned state asylum in Massachusetts.
His channel views reached 100,000 in under 3 minutes. It wasn't because of the abandoned wards. It was because of what the viewer saw. Sitting in the corner of the room, behind him.
The stream lasted exactly 4 minutes and 12 seconds. Police later confirmed he had disappeared less than a minute after the feed cut to black.
That was the only thing they found. Story 1. The Blackwood State Asylum was built on a foundation of absolute isolation. In the late 1950s, it was the primary site for experimental neurosurgery. When the state pulled the funding in 1994, they didn't just move the patients. They left the records, the equipment, and the heavy iron chains exactly where they were.
Leo was a professional urban explorer who specialized in black sites, buildings that were not just abandoned, but erased from public records. At 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, he bypassed the rusted perimeter fence and entered the main lobby. The air inside smelled of wet concrete, rusted iron, and a strange metallic scent that Leo could only describe as ancient blood.
Every step Leo took echoed with a sharp, hollow crack. The floor was covered in a thick layer of industrial dust and broken glass. He was moving toward Ward C, the high-security wing where the most aggressive patients had been kept. According to the rumors, Ward C wasn't just a prison. It was a laboratory.
The chains on the door were newer than the building. Someone had been back here to make sure whatever was in Ward C didn't wander into the rest of the asylum. Leo snapped the iron links and pushed the door open. The atmosphere changed instantly. The air was 10 degrees colder, and the silence was so heavy it felt pressurized.
Leo shined his light into cell 402. The walls were covered in thousands of tally marks, scratched so deep into the brick that they had drawn moisture from the stone. The text, "Help us," was etched in a frantic, jagged script across the ceiling. Leo noticed that the handwriting didn't look human. The letters were too precise, too geometric. He stopped moving. His heart was hammering against his ribs. From the dark corner at the end of the hall, a rhythmic dragging sound echoed.
The figure that emerged into the light was nearly 7 feet long. It had no lower body, just a trailing mass of tattered hospital gauze. It pulled itself forward with arms that were nearly twice the length of a human's. It didn't have a face, just a smooth, pale void where the features should have been.
The entity stopped 10 feet away. It tilted its head in a slow, bone-cracking rotation. Leo's flashlight flickered, the batteries dying, despite being full. He turned and sprinted for the exit, but the door he had just opened was now a solid, unbroken wall of concrete. He was trapped in the loop.
Leo's body was never found, but explorers who visited Blackwood months later reported hearing a new sound in Ward C, a frantic, high-pitched scratching coming from inside the walls.
Story 2. In the early 2000s, the Dover Psychiatric Center was undergoing a phased closure. Most wards were empty, but the hydrotherapy room was still being used for special cases. Sarah was a night shift nurse who had been reassigned to the wing for a single week. She was told to never enter the room after 3 a.m.
At 2:55 a.m., Sarah was monitoring the station. The hydrotherapy room was supposed to be drained at the end of the day shift, but on the monitor, the tub was full of black, stagnant water. Sitting at the edge of the tub was a figure in a heavy leather restraint suit. Their head was bowed, their face obscured by a canvas mask.
Sarah felt a jolt of panic. She checked the logs. No patients were scheduled for therapy. She looked down the hallway. The heavy, pressurized door to the hydrotherapy room was slowly, silently swinging open on its own. A thick, freezing mist began to roll out of the room, smelling of salt and decay.
Her radio was dead. The silence of the asylum was total. She stepped into the hydrotherapy room. The water in the tub was no longer stagnant. It was bubbling, as if something massive was breathing just beneath the surface. The figure in the restraint suit was gone. A pair of bloated, waterlogged hands gripped the porcelain. They were gray and translucent, the veins pulsing with a dark, ink-like fluid. Sarah tried to scream, but the air in the room was so cold it froze her lungs. The figure began to pull itself out of the tub.
The entity wasn't a patient. It was a nurse who had drowned in that very tub during the asylum's first year of operation. She didn't want to help the living. She wanted to bring them into the dark. She raised a rusted 6-inch syringe and lunged at Sarah with a movement that broke every law of human physics.
Sarah fled the building and never returned. When the site was inspected for demolition, the hydrotherapy room was found to be completely dry. The tub was rusted through, but etched into the bottom of the porcelain, in fresh, wet ink, was Sarah's employee ID number.
Story 3. The deepest part of any asylum is the place where they keep the things the world can't know about. Sub-level 4 of the North Hill Institution was a black vault. It was a series of concrete rooms built 50 feet below the morgue. In 2021, an urban explorer named David discovered the entrance hidden behind a fake brick wall in the boiler room. David had to crawl on his stomach for 30 feet to reach the main vault. The air was so dense he could barely breathe. The rhythmic thumping he heard wasn't the building's machinery. It was coming from the concrete floor beneath him. It sounded like a massive, organic heart beating in the dark.
The room was filled with hundreds of glass canisters. Most were broken, but the tank in the center was still intact. Inside was a pulsing mass of living, breathing tissue. It had no skeleton, no organs, and no face. But as David approached, the mass began to change. It started to mimic the shape of David himself, molding the amber fluid into a terrifyingly accurate human silhouette.
The entity was a Subject 0, the result of the Asylum's early attempts to chemically alter human consciousness. It had been trapped in that tank for 70 years, feeding on the negative energy of the building. David turned to run, but the pipe he had crawled through was gone. The room had sealed itself. The tank shattered with a deafening crash, and the pulsing mass of tissue slid across the floor like an oil slick. It moved with an impossible speed, wrapping itself around David's legs. David felt the cold, gelatinous mass sliding up his chest. It wasn't killing him. It was merging with him. It was a biological parasite that needed a host to escape the sublevel. David's skin began to turn the color of bruised fruit as the entity fused with his nervous system.
David was never seen again, but people living in the town near the asylum started reporting a new figure walking the streets at 3 a.m. It looks like David. It wears David's clothes, but it doesn't blink.
We like to believe that when we abandon a place, we take the life with us. We believe that a building is just brick and mortar, incapable of holding on to the suffering of the people inside. But the asylums know better. The shadows in these buildings aren't empty. They are waiting for someone to bring them back into the light.
The night is long, and the shift is only beginning.
No prompt received.